the striking thing that I learned about your place, or this, and I want to ask you about, was that it was in your family since 1910. Is that correct? Or like the land was.
You know, my father came to the United States in 1903, and he said he came into Seattle, and then came down into California as a farm laborer, and he was up and down the valley doing farm labor for a number of years. And I think he settled here in Livingston. I'm not sure exactly what year he settled. I think it's about between 1910 and 1913.
And so it was your father that immigrated, or
Yes.
was okay? So your father.
Yeah, my father immigrated in 2003 when he was 18 years old. Yeah.
Okay, you mean 1903?
In 1903.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
1903, when he was 18.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And do you know what the reason was for him leaving?
I know the reason.
Mm-hmm.
My father went with his cousin to Tokyo from Wakayama to take a test to get into the military, to be officers in the military. And he passed the written test and all that very well, but he had one deaf ear. So he was rejected for service, thank goodness.
Right. Wow.
So he was rejected for service, so he didn't even go home. And he came to the United States.
Wow.
He didn't even go home to Wakayama before he left Japan and came to the United States.
He just
he was so disappointed, I guess, or and then the cousin that he had was inducted into the military, became a general.
Oh my goodness!
He was one of the generals before the war.
Oh, before,
yeah, this
okay.
before the war, so.
And how about, was he out of the military when the war began?
The cousin?
Yeah, the cousin.
Oh, I don't know.
Not sure.
I think he was. I think he had passed away already by then.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. So your dad didn't go back. He just knew he was gonna come to the States.
He
if
just
he did.
left. He just left Japan.
Oh my gosh. So totally by himself. He
Yes,
was alone.
as far as I know, he was by himself.
Okay.
I don't know that he was with anyone else.
Okay. Wow. So somehow he made it down to this area, and it was farming because that's just what everyone else.
Yeah, up and down the valley, there's lots of farming.
Yeah.
And it's seasonal, of course, but then they commuted up and down the valley, and he had friends that he made while he was doing that. And,
okay. So he bought this.
I don't know whether you know anything about this area, but this area is called Yamato Colony. Have you heard of Abiko? Mr. Abiko from San Francisco?
No.
He came to the United States about 1885, and he was a relatively well-educated man. Became involved in the newspaper. In fact, he started the Nichibei.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Wow,
and
okay.
it's still going on, the Nichibei sort of.
Yeah.
It's only once a week now, but he also had labor groups that he used to control and send out to Utah and things like that. And he and some friends, he saw these migrant workers really basically going up and down and spending their money in San Francisco, blowing it. So I guess that's why he thought that he'd start a community, and they came. Several of them talked about it and became friends, and decided that they would look for a place to start a community. And they came down to the valley and looked around and decided that they would pick Livingston because the water was so good.
Oh wow!
Oh goodness.
And so they bought, I think, 2,000 acres to begin with, and opened it up for Japanese people to immigrate into, and they sold the land to the people that came in, and that's how the community started. And it actually started with two communities. There's a Livingston Yamato Colony, which is about 2,000 acres to begin with, and then there's a Cressy, which is adjacent to Livingston, and there's a colony that was started there, and then this is in 1906 it was began.
Wow!
Just at the time of the earthquake.
The earthquake,
Yeah, at the time of the earthquake. And so there were about 6 or 7 families that came right after the earthquake into Livingston and started the community.
I see.
And it's interesting that this is one community that has never had a Buddhist church in it. In
Yeah.
all the years that we've been here,
Yeah.
there's never had a Buddhist church. It's always been a Christian church. The people that, and he, this Abiko was also a Christian,
Okay.
Oh, I see.
and so it became a Christian community, and
Got you.
it's been that way ever since. Yeah, and about 1940, when was about 1960 or 50 something, we had a Japanese minister here in our church. It was a mission church of the Methodist denomination,
Okay.
and he got into a train wreck right in Livingston.
Oh my gosh.
He and got killed,
Oh,
the minister.
no.
And so at that time, there was a town church, was also a Methodist church, and there were some of the older Niseis that went to the town church, but most of us went to the little community church right close to here. It's only a half mile from here, and then and so in 1960, I guess it was in the 60s, after this minister got killed, the two churches decided to get together.
Okay.
And the
Wow.
Caucasian church lost some members as a result, but
Oh, really?
we've been together ever since as a church, and we have and we're on the site of the old Methodist church. There's Yamato, of course, is old Japan. The word
Oh,
Yamato.
I see. Okay. I
Yeah,
see.
but-
Okay.
But that's not why they started it that way. That they tell me there was what they call a yam station just north of Atwater,
Uh-huh.
and they also had gone up and down the area looking for a place to settle, the Abiko and his group.
Yeah.
And so they took that name, the Yam Station plus Atwater,
Uh-huh.
and made a Yamato out of it. So that's the story.
That's what they say.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the story that we hear.
Interesting.
But it
It-
just
it
so
was-
happens to fit.
No, it wasn't really named for Yamato, like the
For
Yamato meaning the old Japan.
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 Ah, I see. That's actually a funnier story, though. You could say like
Yeah, that's
yams and
interesting.
Atwater.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
yeah. Oh my goodness.
And this area is very famous for sweet potatoes.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
probably the center of all the sweet potatoes that are raised in California. And California
Wow.
raises, we're probably the third state in size of sweet potato production,
Wow.
next to North Carolina and Louisiana and some of those other states.
They're so good. I always eat sweet potatoes.
Yeah, you like sweet potatoes?
I do. I
Fruit-
eat sweet potatoes
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time. But so, what do you grow on your
Well,
farm?
you know, things change over the years.
Mm-hmm.
When they first started with grapes.
Okay.
That was the main crop in the
Grapes.
old days.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to survive until the grapes came into bearing, they used to raise some things like sweet potatoes and
Yeah.
strawberries and things in between.
Okay.
And that's how they survived early on until
oh.
the grapes came into bearing. Well, after the war, before the war, the grape price became so bad.
Oh, really?
It was just rarely made any money on it. It got so bad, during the wartime years, the price came way up, went sky high,
Oh, it did.
and people with grapes made a lot of money.
I see.
And we were gone, but fortunately, in Livingston and Cressy and Cortez, we were very active in cooperatives. Livingston had a first cooperative started in 1915. So that's a long time ago, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Cooperative. It's actually a selling cooperative was what it was.
Okay.
And then Cortez had a cooperative. At the time of when 9066 was signed, there was a curfew, and they said you can't go more than 5 miles. And Cortez was 5 miles from Cressy, and Livingston is about 4 miles from Cressy. It was about 4 miles from each side. So they got together and decided that they would form a trusteeship. And they formed a trusteeship, hired a gentleman who worked for Bank of America for many years, and he ran the trusteeship. And so all the land that was in the cooperatives were protected during the war years. They leased it out to other people.
I see.
That's
This
amazing.
trusteeship did. And they had a couple of 2 or 3 men that were friendly men within the community to be the trustees.
I see.
And then there was a manager that was hired to operate all this.
Okay.
and he ran it and did very good, very well. There was a very trusted secretary that was part of the co-op before the war, and she watched it very carefully and made sure that everything was okay, and everybody got their land back. So
That's
Livingston,
right.
Cortez, and Cressy, everybody came back, and we all had our property back. And actually, the manager for the trusteeship came to the camp several times during the war years
Really?
to report on what he was doing. So yeah,
All the way out to Colorado.
all the way to Colorado.
Oh
Yep.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
So
amazing.
it worked out very well.
Yes.
Some ranches weren't kept up too well. Others were kept up quite well. But basically, at least everybody got the mortgages that had to be paid were paid, and the taxes were paid and all that. So nobody lost their land. Everybody got their land back.
lucky.
Yeah,
Gee.
it was very well thought out and well done and worked out very well.
Right.
Yeah, in Livingston, Cortez, and Cressy.
And so, if you can remember, like, was your father or your family, was everyone sort of more relaxed away, and for lack of a better word, to go into camp because you knew that there was going to be something?
They didn't know when they went into camp how it's going to work out. Basically, they hoped it would work out well. I'm sure, but at least something was done to all the farms without individually farmers just trying to do whatever they could. Because if they did that, they would have lost a lot of the farms undoubtedly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that worked out very well. As a matter, but my father had a little out with the cooperative before the war, and so he wasn't a part of the co-op. But we found a teacher at the high school who was we didn't know he was a Mormon, but he was a Latter-day Saint. And we asked him to run our ranch for us, and he did, and he just did a good job, even put money in the bank for us. So we were very fortunate we came back and had all our land back.
And
Yep.
so, and then your mother, how did she
How did
meet
she
your
fit in?
father? And yeah.
My mother and my father she was a picture bride, basically.
Oh, I see.
She was one of the picture brides where I think the families knew each other in Japan, and it was arranged there.
So she was also from Wakayama?
Yes, she was also. She was a teacher. She was teaching in
goodness.
Japan,
I see.
and she left teaching and came to the United States as a picture bride and stayed here all the rest of her life. And she lived until she was about 86 years old. So she lived until not too many years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I see.
So when they came in to recruit in the camp, the first group that came in was to recruit for the 442.
Oh, I see.
And a lot of my friends went to the 442, 442nd Regiment. And they came in just shortly thereafter looking for people for MIS, Military Intelligence Service, and they had the school. You know, they started that school in the Presidio of San Francisco.
That's right.
Yeah, and before the war. In I think October or November of 1941, the school was started.
Okay.
And that's when who became the head of the language part of it, his name was ISO, John ISO.
Okay.
He became a lieutenant colonel in the end. But
I see.
he's the one that really started the language part of it. And they had other, Mashburn was a guy named, I think Colonel Mashburn or something like that was the head of it. And they actually started in the Presidio. And as soon as the Japanese people all got moved, they had to do something. So they moved the school to Minnesota, Camp Savage, Minnesota.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And when I enlisted in November of 1943, I was sent to Camp Savage in Minnesota to learn the language.
I see.
Okay. Now, was there when that loyalty questionnaire came out? So, how was your family answer? Was there any contention? Everyone just kind of answered yes to everything.
I think my family, we all answered yes. I'm not sure what my father did.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure because there were Issei's. If they answered yes on either one of them, especially on the second one, they wouldn't have a country.
Right.
They would be countryless because they couldn't become citizens.
Right.
So I'm not sure how he answered. But I did talk to my father before I went into the service, and he said, well, this is your country. if that's what you want to do, you just go ahead. So he accepted my going into the service.
He supported it.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Do you remember what your mother, did she say anything to you before you left?
I don't remember my mother speaking about it at the time.
Okay.
I just don't remember that.
Yeah. You did. I'm wondering if you felt like a sense of, or if they were ever worried for you going into the military and, you know.
I have no idea how they
idea.
felt about it, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you had friends that you knew that were also going to go into the MIS and then go for training into...
Yeah, I had a few, well, most of my MIS friends, and there were some, you know, the draft was cut off when 9066 happened. There was no longer a draft for the Japanese people, and it didn't come back until January of 1944. So I went in, I volunteered in before the draft was started. After the draft was started in 44, there were quite a number of people that went to MIS, the language school, in 45 and 46, actually. And of course the war was over in 45. So there were friends of mine that went to language school, but I don't know how much they learned or anything. I have no idea. I was gone by then.
Okay. Okay. And so in the training, is that where the intensive language schools where you got to speak and you had to learn Japanese, just like
we had, you know, that was the toughest school I ever went to. It was tough.
Yeah.
You know, we had to learn a set number of kanjis.
Yes.
In a certain period of time, and we could never learn it fast enough, especially those of us who were from the stateside that didn't have much Japanese. Now, the Hawaiian kids had no problem, really, because they learned a lot of Japanese while they were in Hawaii. So most of my friends were Hawaiian kids.
Oh, okay.
But those of us who were from the States and didn't have much Japanese, we studied with flashlights and in the bathroom.
Oh, my gosh.
After lights went out. Oh, yeah, we did a lot of that.
Was learning the kanji the hardest part for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was very difficult. Yeah.
Wow. And who were the teachers?
Well, the teachers were almost all Kibes. Almost all the teachers were Kibes who had gone to Japan and were educated.
Okay.
You know, this John Iso, who became the head of the language school, was really a well-educated man. He had gone back to Japan and learned Japanese, but he had also gone to college in Japan.
Oh.
And he came back to the United States, went to college here.
Okay.
So he was a very highly educated young man, and when they found him, he was in the motor pool as a private.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, when they actually found him, they found his record and got him, but
okay.
And they had to convince him to stay in the service because he was a little older.
Oh, he was.
You know, he could have gotten out of the service right away.
Okay.
At that time, I think he was well in his late 20s or almost in his 30s already by then. So they convinced him to stay and to become the head of the language school.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Wow. After you were in the training, you were aware that it was leading up to the occupation of you guys going to Tokyo?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, we knew that.
Okay.
Yeah, we expected that all along.
Yeah. And so we're kind of jumping ahead, but we can go back to camp. But when you landed in Tokyo or in Japan, what were some of your first?
The first thing we did was we got shipped out of San Francisco, and this was in July of 1945, and we're sent to the Philippines. And so they had a translating group in the Philippines called ATIS, Allied Translating and Interpreting Section, part of the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
And we were stationed close to Manila at the racetrack at Manila. That's where we were stationed. And we stayed there. Of course, we went in July. We were there about the end of July. And of course, the atom bomb was dropped in August, and the war ended in the middle of August. So in September, they sent us right into Japan.
Okay. And
as
what were
part of the translating interpreting group.
right?
Yeah.
What were some of your memories of being there and
Well,
seeing?
one of the most vivid memories I have of it is when we went by ship to Yokohama, and Yokohama's about 20 miles from Tokyo, and we were sent into Tokyo for billeting and because they had some of their big government buildings still standing there in Tokyo, and we were stationed in one of the bigger government buildings. We were actually in the NYK building, Nippon Yusen Kaisha
Oh yeah.
building. We were billeted there, and that trip from Yokohama to Tokyo was by train because they still had trains going, and it was for 20 miles. It was all black, all burned out.
Wow.
It was incredible how that was so burnt out. Because I think actually the death toll in Tokyo was probably worse than Hiroshima when the atom bomb was dropped, because of the incendiary bombs that were dropped, and everything in Japan was made out of paper and wood.
Yes.
And so they burnt like paper. Everything burnt up like paper, basically. And they say that it was so bad that there was just no oxygen left on a lot of it. And people just died from lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was so severe, the fires that they had.
Very.
And interestingly, we looked just like the Japanese people, but we're wearing American uniforms. And so they treated us real well.
Okay.
The Japanese people were real nice to us, and we got to know them pretty well.
Yeah.
Got to be friendly with quite a few of them.
Were they grateful for your presence, for being there? Like, did they feel
I don't know if they were grateful for our being there. We beat them,
Yeah.
They were vanquished by the American army.
Right.
But
they still treated you.
They accepted those of us who could speak their language quite well.
Right.
And we visited quite a few people that we got to know over there.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, your service was required when you're translating, like, for military, Japanese military?
Yeah, all military stuff.
I see.
Yeah, there were code books and things that we translated.
Oh, I see.
I don't know how much I translated. I don't think very much. I just didn't have that much Japanese background. But
Then were you, like, in a interrogation, perhaps, that you were an interpreter?
yeah, I was interpreter. I was assigned to a British major.
Oh, I see.
I was in the GHQ, which was General Headquarters building, which was the Daiichi building in Tokyo,
Oh, yeah.
where MacArthur was, and he was always on the top floor. That was his office.
Okay.
And I think it was only about 6 stories high. I don't think it was that high.
Yeah.
It was a small. Now you look at it, it's a tiny building compared to the rest of Tokyo. But I was on the bottom floor, and I was stationed right there on the bottom floor, interpreting for this British major. And I don't remember a heck of a lot about it, but we went to the prison there and saw quite a few of the prisoners that were there. And we went to, I had to interpret this for this British major who was looking into the Black Dragon Society. There was what they call the Black Dragon Society in Japan.
Okay. So Black Dragon, I've never heard of this.
Yeah,
Black Dragon
Yeah,
Society?
that was a famous sort of a secretive society
Oh, I see.
in Japan
Okay.
before the war.
Oh, I see.
of high ranking
Yes, yes.
like military
Well, I'm not
operation,
sure if it had military people, but this guy was a civilian that we went to interview. He was the head of it.
Oh.
And
Okay.
they offered us tea like this.
Yeah.
A British major wouldn't drink it. He was so scared he was going to get poisoned.
Wow. Yeah, I could imagine.
I had no trouble drinking the tea.
Yeah, you're like, okay. I mean, your experience there in Japan was very, I mean, how would you say, I mean, was it kind of like eye-opening for you of like seeing what the military had done? Or, I mean, you just sort of felt like you had a job to do and, this was
I think I just really sort of felt that I had a job to do. And if we had some translating to do or interpreting, we did that. Nothing profound or anything, I'm sure. But
Mm-hmm.
and we just enjoyed our stay in Japan.
You did, yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Wow.
And then before I came out, left Japan, I got a leave in Japan and went to visit my relatives in Wakayama.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you
And
did.
this is in 1946, early 46.
Okay.
And I had never met any of them
Right.
because I'd never gone to Japan. And my father, he came in 1903, but he never went back to Japan even once.
He didn't.
No, he never went back even once. I went to visit them, and
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I went home when I
You
went to
did.
visit them. Yeah,
They
course
They
they-
welcomed you.
yeah, they did.
Uh-huh.
They
Oh,
they
wow.
were very poor. Everybody was very poor in Japan. There was nothing there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
right.
And I know when we visited some people in Tokyo, they would serve us sweet potato,
Oh yeah.
baked sweet potato
Yeah.
sliced.
Yeah.
And that's all they had basically. And
Yeah.
well, that's one of the other things I remember very clearly is all these young girls that probably in their early teens
Mm-hmm.
that carry a knapsack with their belongings in it, going to the country to barter for food.
Okay.
And most of the food that they can barter for was sweet potatoes.
right.
Yeah, so
Goodness.
I remember that very clearly. Yeah.
Were you really? I mean, they were poor, but were you relieved that they were kind of intact? Like they weren't too affected by
The
what
wa-
happened, you know, or were they? And did they kind of like?
Well, you know, this is Wakayama, which was not an area that got bombed out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an intact area,
Right.
and so the people were better off, I'm sure, there than in Tokyo and those places where they
Yeah.
got bombed. But
Yeah.
I had the cousin. Well, he really wasn't the cousin. He was my father's nephew. My father's nephew,
Mm-hmm.
who sort of took us around, but he was in the service. He was one of the lucky ones that got back from Manchuria very early.
Oh, wow.
And so he was
Oh.
back by beginning of 1946 already.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he was fortunate.
Yeah, he was very fortunate. Yeah,
Yeah.
there were some that didn't get back for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Wow. And okay, so as that was happening, then in Amachi, what was happening with your family? When did they leave, and were you aware of
Well, yeah, well, the Amachi was closed in the middle of towards the end of 1945.
Okay.
Amachi was closed down.
Mm-hmm.
My folks came back, and the West Coast opened up on the first beginning of 1945,
Okay.
and so there were some people that started coming back early in the year. My folks came back, I think, in April or so of 1945.
Oh, really?
They
Okay.
came back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still relatively early, I think.
Yeah, relatively early, yes.
for-
And our old home is right across the street. That's where I was born.
Oh, really?
I was born right.
Wow.
I was born right across the street there, and our house was shot by
Oh.
people that didn't want us back.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, when they were living in there, there's still bullet holes in this house. From
Is the house still there?
yes, the house is still there.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
It's
Wow.
vacated, but it's...
No.
Oh.
My daughter lives there now.
Oh wow.
We lived there for a while
Oh, my
until we built
goodness.
this house and moved over here.
But
So my
But
daughter
you
decided.
still see the bullet holes riddled?
Yeah, they're still there.
Oh, that's crazy. Wow.
I know.
There were several shootings that went on during that period of time.
Uh-huh.
I think April, May, somewhere June, sometime in there, in 1945, and there were a number of shootings that went on. My brother came back from the service. He was also in the service. He got drafted after I was in the service, and he's older than I am.
Okay.
And so he came home actually to try to get some help from the local law enforcement people. Or actually, he went before the supervisors and asked them for help to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, well, they don't have any money, and nobody wanted us back anyway, so.
So they weren't going to get involved.
No, so they didn't get involved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you guys, did you feel afraid for coming home and like, or for your family? Were you like, this is.
Well, we were a little upset.
Yeah.
Our house was being shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's nothing you could do if you're in the service and you're far away. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just imagine that's really unsettling.
Yeah, it was
to
a little
think-
unsettling at the time that such a thing could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So in camp, what did your parents do? Did they work like, you know, had a lot of farmers?
No,
and all that
my
kind of stuff?
father had Bright's disease, and that's kidney disease.
Oh, kidney. Okay.
Before the war.
Oh.
And so my brother actually was going to UC Berkeley, and he went to UC Berkeley for 1 year, I think, and then he had to come home to help on the ranch because my father wasn't well. And so when we went into the camp, my father was not well from the Bright's disease,
Oh, wow.
from the kidney problem. And so, of course, he didn't do anything in camp.
Yeah.
My mother used to get food from the kitchen and sort of prepare it on a hot plate in our little barrack for him, so that he would have food that wasn't salty and stuff.
Oh, I see. And so he was okay though. Did he
Yeah.
have to get medical treatment in the camp?
No, he didn't get any. I don't know if he had any medical treatment or anything. I don't think he did.
Oh.
There was not much of a. There was a hospital there, but it wasn't much of a hospital.
Right.
And so he survived through it, and he came home.
Okay.
And he died in 1945, after about 6 months after he came home.
Oh, wow.
So he lived through it until he came back. Yeah, which was
Oh, wow.
which was wonderful for him. At least he got back. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. How old was he when he passed?
I think he died at 64.
Oh, 64.
Pretty sure he was 64
Okay.
when
And your mother was 86?
Yeah, she lived to be 86, so she lived
Wow.
until not too long ago.
Okay. In camp, when you were there, what were some of your memories of, you know, coming in and, you know, living in the barracks?
Oh,
and...
I remember, you know, we're from here. We lived here, and our church is just a quarter of a mile from here, and that's where they came after us. But we also were farmers, and we had trucks, and so we took a lot more than what you could carry.
Oh, so you could take yourself.
And they never objected to our taking additional things.
Really?
If we got it into camp.
Oh, gee.
And then from there, when they went to Colorado, they just put it on the train and took it all for us.
Oh, my gosh.
So
Was that sounds rare. Is that really rare?
It was rare.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty rare.
Oh.
But we don't talk about that very much when we go to speak.
I guess not. We took a truck full of things.
Well, there were a lot of people that did in the area.
Yeah.
Because my mother even took a sewing machine,
Oh, okay.
a Singer sewing machine she had with her. And I had my saxophone, which I, you know, normally you wouldn't take something like that.
No.
It's only what you can carry. So we were able to take all that kind of stuff and took a lot more than most people were able to.
Wow, that is so interesting. I've never heard of anyone being able to
Is that
put
right?
that on the train.
Yeah.
And
well,
they'll bring it for you.
Yeah,
you
they
know?
did. We just took it over there, and it was all unloaded right there in the assembly center.
Okay.
And we took it into our barrack. And when we left, we took it out to where they were shipping things, and they took it for us.
Okay.
And it all went to Colorado.
Okay, so how long were you in Amachi then? Did you live there
I was
before?
there from September of 1942 until November when I went into the service, 43.
Oh, okay.
I went in 1943. I didn't turn 18 until I was a year in camp.
Oh, I see.
I went into the assembly center. The notice came out on the walls.
Yes.
And it said that you had to be there by a certain date. Well, the date was May the 13th, 1942. That was my 17th birthday. You know, from this small community, there were a lot of us that went in the service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there were, from Cortez and Livingston, I think there were about 60 young men that went into service, and
oh wow,
there aren't that many Japanese people.
I know. That's what I was gonna say.
I think there were about 60 of us that were in the service during that time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.